What's up, guys? Smoke break coming from you from my garage. Let's see if I can crack the tape there. Alright, I'm going to make a video about, I had no one on here ask me about it. I'm going to make a video about it anyway. I had some friends ask me, like, what are some cool conspiracy books to read. I have a few here. And I'll show you and talk a little bit about. Of course, there's a very popular one I don't have here, but you can get on Amazon. It's called None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen. That's a good book. Relatively inexpensive, usually, about $15. So, let's see. There's another one that's very expensive, which is The Bloodlines of the Illuminati by Fitz Springmeier. That is a pretty expensive book, usually. It's very thick. It's like fucking bam. So it's a hardcover. I think they only sell it in hardcover. Let's see. It's another good conspiracy book that I've read. You got American Conspiracies by Jesse Ventura. It's not too shabby. 63 Documents the Government Doesn't Want You to See by Jesse Ventura. And he has another guy write it with him too. I forgot that guy's name. Sorry. And let's see. All right, I'll just get into it, and if I think of others, I'll just tell you. There's The Skull and Bones by, I think it's called Skull and Bones by Anthony Sutton, who is actually helped out by a woman from Maine whose father was in the Skull and Bones Society, and she was actually an assistant director of education under the Reagan administration. Her name is Charlotte Iserby, and it's Iserby, but it's spelled Iserbyt, like ISHBYT or something like that. And she wrote a book called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. She goes into when we started socializing in the schools and came up with teaching plans that she says are hurtful to the youth of America, and she outlines why. That's a pretty good book. I read that a while ago. I don't actually have it. I think I sold it. So let's see. All right. So start. We're not going to fucking lead you off with that book. That book's fucking crazy. So I'll lead you off with this is called Secret Societies and Subversive Movements. It's by Nessa Webster. You got the all-seeing eye right there. She lived between 1876 and 1960. She was a controversial historian, occultist, and author who revived conspiracy theories about the Illuminati. And there was another friggin' lady that fucking wrote something in World War. Blavatsky. That's another lady who wrote a book on secret societies, stuff like that, and she was an occultist too. So this is basically this is actually a really good book. It has some typos in it. I don't know if it was because of maybe translation or what, but she goes into basically every single religion offshoot of the secret societies. So you got everything from Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, and all the major religions and their secret society offshoots, and she draws similarities between them, how they all have she calls it dualism and stuff like this. So that's a good book. It's not too thick. I mean, you could probably read that in, I don't know, like a week. You could read it in a day probably, but depends how fast a reader you are. But if you're just casually, reading it on the shitter and before you went to bed, you could probably read that fucking in a week. This is a guy that I started out with, and his name is Ralph Epperson, and he wrote a book. He wrote two books. Well, two books actually I have from him. and it's called The Unseen Hand. It's an introduction to the conspiratorial view of American history. It's a pretty thick book, but it also has a works cited page in the back. It goes over, Revolutionary War, Civil War, everything like that. Then you have The New World Order by the Ralph Epperson, and he talks a lot about the Masons in this book. Okay, now for the crazy. If this isn't crazy for you, but this here is a New York Times bestseller. It's by Mark Booth, and it's called The Secret History of the World. And he goes over alchemy, Freemasonry, the Illuminati, the Garden of Eden, the esoteric meaning of the Garden of Eden, the Knights Templar, the Looking Glass universe, the gods who loved women, the Green King, the prophets, the Sphinx, and the Time Lock, the Neolithic Alexander. There's also one called Zarathustraism or something. Zarathustra. And he goes through Lucifer, Gnostic and shaman type religions, Muhammad, Gabriel, and of course the Shakespeare conspiracy. And if you don't know what the Shakespeare conspiracy is, it's the theory that Shakespeare couldn't read or write. He was just some dude he was like a puppet they just put out there saying he was the writer when he wasn't, to protect the real writer, who was Sir Francis Bacon. Okay, and he also goes into the Rosa Christians and stuff like that. It's a really good book. It is a little fucking, even for me, it was a little out there, but it was a fun little read. It is pretty thick, not a little read, but it was a fun read. He goes over a lot of different things. And you also you have the all-seeing eye right there. It is a New York Times bestseller. You can't fucking tell. It says it on the fucking top right there. See if I can turn it around. Maybe then you'll be able to read it right side up. New York Times bestseller. Okay. So that's my little books on conspiracy that, if you guys were interested in buying one. If you guys are interested in buying just one, I would go with The Unseen Hand. That's what I started with. It's very informative. He has a works cited page in the back. So and he's telling you that there's basically two different views of world history. The coincidental accidental view of history, which is what most historians, things just happen type deal. Anything that says it's a conspiracy is just a coincidence. There's that view of history, and there's a conspiratorial view of history where I kind of subscribe to both of them. I don't subscribe to just conspiracy everything or coincidence everything, but I think there's a lot of fucking coincidences that happen on certain things, and one of them is the Federal Reserve and how they actually got the Federal Reserve Act passed on a snowy night. I think December 23rd, and back in the day they didn't need a certain number of people there to vote on anything, so I think there was only 5 people that voted, and that's how it passed. I mean, that's fucking weird. All right, so there it is. It's been Smoke Break. I'm down to the butt. Said it's a great book. Unseen Hand. It's about $14, $15. You probably find it for 10 if it's used on Amazon. So have a good night.